Hey, we're back. Process, preparation, and performance. It's the next episode. Bill and JR are here. We are honored to have a guy in much, much nicer weather than us. Much nicer weather. He is going to teach us all about recruiting tonight. We have Coach Mike on the line. Coach Mike, how you doing?
Well, how are you?
Oh, I can't complain. So tell everybody where you're at.
I'm in a little suburb off of Phoenix, Arizona, a place called Chandler. So we're down in Arizona, just a few miles outside of the metro area.
You didn't have any hail recently, did you?
Absolutely no hail. We rarely get any.
JR, the hail we got, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. Took the car to the shop today. What'd you find out?
About 12,000. So 12,000 in about 4 weeks. And then we're supposed to get more hail tonight, which there's so much wind going on outside right now. It's unbelievable.
You don't have a garage, do you?
That was a minor oversight when we decided to remodel this house.
Coach Mike, you got a garage down there in Chandler, Arizona?
No, we don't. We don't even have hallways in school. Most of it's outdoor campuses. So.
Oh my goodness.
We do have a garage, but we don't have carports like you guys in the Midwest. So
$12,000, JR? That's crazy.
It's going to take a while to fix that thing, that's for sure.
You know, the funny thing is we got a text from one of our other coaches today, and he saved some of the hail just to show JR. He's got it in his fridge, and I think JR's a little upset about it. Going to go take a baseball bat over there later today or something and finish off that hail. But let's get down to it. Coach Mike, Prepstar, totally awesome. Learned about it. I love what you guys are doing. Tell us a little bit about Prepstar, how it got started.
So Prepstar started in 1981. Essentially, what it started out of was what many of you guys our age, us 40s, us guys who were raised before the internet. We started with basically a magazine to help get guys exposure. Back in the day, we didn't have Huddle, we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have Twitter and all kinds of nice amenities to broadcast our information. So the guy who originally founded the company, his name's Jeff Duva. He had a transfer situation back in the 70s. And I couldn't even imagine what that was. But he actually transferred from one school and ended up in Hawaii. So not a bad place if you're going to transfer colleges. That whole experience was kind of just eye-opening for him. So he spent some time, after he graduated, he kind of wrestled with that. How do I help guys? How do I help good players find coaches? And how do we help coaches find players? And this was, early 80s, 80, 81. So we started with the magazine. Today, that magazine's called Prepstar Magazine. It started as Blue Chip Magazine. I think once we put a thing on the brand, but it became Prepstar Magazine. We publish that magazine 4 times a year, features the best players in the country. And that really, to me, is the backbone of who we are, is the magazine and the high quality athletes that we're connected with. We
were talking off air, and you've had some pretty famous dudes on that magazine. Aaron Rodgers, was that right? Was he on that magazine?
He was. I don't think he was a cover on the magazine, but he was a Prepstar guy. And a lot of folks know his story. He just was under the radar. Came to us his senior year, ended up to go into JUCO. We still worked with him and his family, and I think he was at it was Butte College. It was California Junior College, and ended up getting seen by Cal, and we know the rest. But yeah, Tim Tebow was a Prepstar guy. You can see his magazine cover on our website. It's just tons of guys that. Leonard Fournette, you name them. There's tons of guys on through the magazine. I think we have 4 Heisman Trophy winners in all. I think it's close to 300 guys go on to the NFL that have been in the magazine.
That's incredible, man. That's totally awesome. But also, what we were talking about is your recruiting service is a little different. You don't just take anybody who shows up. There's you guys are pretty particular about what goes on. Can you tell us a little bit about that process?
Right. So really particular about the athletes we connect with or we work with. Um, so basically, you guys know in the recruiting space, there's a lot of different groups out there. There's a lot of service, if you will. I really consider Prepstar service as much of an organization or even an agency kind of thing. The databases are your bigger groups, not very selective, and they don't vary. So I think that bad taste in the mouth for a lot of people. When you got hundreds of thousands, and some of these groups will even put it right on their website. They got million guys or girls or what have you. Their database. We know as coaches that statistically isn't the case. We know the reality is not every kid that's on uniform is going to be the next college player. And so we chose to do was be more selective, work with higher quality athletes. A lot of those guys come through a referral process to us, so it makes a recommendation before we even get on the phone with these kids. We look for a specific caliber player that we feel confident that if we, well, the way I do it is if I'm going to contact a coach on behalf of a player, I don't want that college coach to look at me and say, Mike, are you serious? Like, this is what you're giving me kind of thing. We're not going to hit a home run every time. Not every kid's going to fit, but we feel like because colleges that see our Prepstar guys and girls know that our guys are qualified, they're committed, they're eligible, they're expecting a certain caliber of player, and that's what we're looking for. We're looking for those kids. Not only great athletes, but great students, good people in the community, just well-rounded.
So when you talk about that, if somebody gets involved with Prepstar, what services can they expect? I mean, you kind of talked about you'll talk to the coaches, you'll make sure from a quality standpoint, does the kid act right, and obviously has the talent. But once they're with you, kind of describe that process of what they'll go through on their journey here to college.
Right. Like a lot of families, what they need most is guidance. And I think that is we all know the recruiting waters are really, really choppy. They're always changing, and it just has to have somebody help you navigate that. So I think that's one of the things that a lot of families look for is somebody to help them to just kind of to navigate the process, to be able to, it's an expert in the field. We all have specialties. If you need a plumber, you're not going to call a guy that's a driveway guy. If you need toilet fixed, if you're going to get the hail job, the repairs, you're not calling a guy that works in an office. Typing 60 words a minute or whatever. But
right.
So I feel like a lot of families, a lot of my time is spent just people or working like a mentor through the process of how do we get in front of the right coaches? How do we help you get to the right camps? How do we connect you with the right coaches? And then some of the amenities, like I spend a ton of time teaching athletes just how to communicate effectively, whether that is writing an email. I actually wrote an ebook about how to write emails to coaches. And I gave the guys like 25 examples and explained every situation for writing an email to that. I call it the guide to writing simple emails or great recruiting emails. Communication is one of the biggest things. How does a kid prepare for a visit? How does a kid do an interview with the coach? What should he expect or she expect in that conversation? So I spend a lot of time just teaching them those small nuances of how to go about that process and how to project themselves in the most positive way. We also do things, editing video for the athletes. We even have an academic program involved in our overall program for the athletes where they can have ACT and SAT tutoring assistance and practice tests and things like that. So it's really fully comprehensive. It's not just about putting a website up or, which a lot of these groups do. You just kind of get a website and then that's what they call recruiting. And a Twitter, a Twitter post or Twitter handle isn't recruiting either, so we do it all. We cover it all and make sure they have all their bases covered.
That's great. I mean, I wish I had something like this, to be honest with you. I got to my college football team because a friend of the family came to my dad and said, "Hey, Bill, I would love it if your son went and played at the school where I played. I think that would be totally great." And because we got a positive referral from somebody my mom cared about, it was like, all right, well, let's go. To be honest with you, I didn't even know they were a school until he told us about it and talked about it. It wasn't something we were even looking at. So to provide those types of services, it's really awesome because as well as I do, and people could take this for whatever they want. They probably won't like it, but there's a lot of leeches out there, right? I mean, there's a lot of guys trying to just make money on somebody as much as they can and take advantage of them or her. And for parents, it's hard to know who to navigate through and where to go. But I'm sure a lot of people are going to say, "Hey, Bill, JR, how'd you get this guy Mike from Arizona on the podcast?" And what a lot of people don't know is you have ties to Jefferson City, Missouri, right? So it's kind of like that old quiz, 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, right? You could name any movie, right?
Right.
So all these guys we've been talking to on the podcast, JR, we all kind of have some kind of relation back here to the state capital. But Coach Mike, tell us how you have ties back here in Jeff City.
So my wife's family is actually from Missouri. Her grandparents are from Mountain View, so they homesteaded way back then. Her father, my wife's father, my father-in-law, is a minister. He's actively retired. He was a pastor in Jefferson City. So we ended up, after we got married, coming over there just because we got started. So started raising a family over there before we left and headed out to other places. But as I said, I got married in the Governor's Garden there, which is kind of cool. I don't think a lot of people get a chance to do that. But Jeff City was a great place. My oldest was born there, and we still have connections from. That's been a long time. I don't even begin to want to tell you how long ago it was, but longer than I care to admit. But you mentioned something about your own experience, and I think that when I went through the process, the same thing. I grew up in a working class, middle class family. My dad worked at a factory. My mom worked in the fast food industry and hospitality industry. Just good, hardworking people. And back in the early 90s, we didn't have all this technology. So my recruiting was probably very similar. A lot of word of mouth, a lot of regional interest. But my parents didn't know. My dad went the process back in the 60s, which was even much more loose than what it was in the 90s. That's back when there wasn't a whole lot of regulations and there were offer, a lot of guys. And he didn't go. He had a knee injury his senior year that took away that. But when I got to the process, it was always, we can't afford to do these camps. We can't afford to these visits. And I remember one time getting my junior year, I had a good junior year, and I got a letter from Joe Paterno, signed letter from Joe Paterno, to come to do a visit. Well, I don't have it. That was part of my fun story is my dad kept it. And when my dad passed about 16 years ago, and we started going through his belongings, he had the letter in his kind of hope chest or whatever it was. He had a little chest by his bed. But I can remember my dad. I grew up, southwest Ohio, kind of in between Dayton and Cincinnati. And he said, there's no way we can afford this. There's no way we can afford to do a visit, and we need to find something closer. And he basically just said, give another option. And I know, like for myself, fast forward 25, 27 years to my daughter, you know, I didn't want that to happen to her. And I feel like now recruiting is a lot different. Kids can get recruited all over the country now. And that's what I look for is how do we help these kids have opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have. That's what makes it real exciting about recruiting now and this time that we're doing right now. So it's really awesome. It's really exciting time.
It is really exciting. And, you know, going through it with my older son, David, who wrestled in college, and, you know, I still got 3 boys in school that all tell me they want to go do something in college and play a sport.
Right.
So this is all stuff that I'm very much wanting to learn more about. But if you don't mind, tell all those people listening, let's just give them 2 or 3 success stories of, you know, feel good moments that you've come across from guys or gals that are trying to get recruited, trying to go somewhere, and how Prepstar helped them.
Oh my gosh, I could tell you a couple of them. I could tell you a lot more than a couple of them. One that comes to mind is we had a kid. I picked up a young man as a freshman, going into his freshman or sophomore year, baseball player, really talented left-handed kid out of Anaheim, California. And you know, in the perfect recruiting scenario, the junior year is when that athlete really, really starts to see everything come together, all the pieces come together. So we had that situation for this young man, and he, great, really good player, really good team, very supportive parents. Both parents are teachers. Just kind of salt of the earth people. Really actually became quite good friends with him over the years of working alongside of him. So this young man, he started getting a lot of interest. September 1st, as you know, is a big day for recruiting as a junior. And I can remember talking to his dad just a few days before and saying, do you think he's going to get some phone calls? And I guarantee he's going to get phone calls. I guarantee he's going to get phone calls. I'm not so sure. You know, dads are a little negative. So he started getting the phone calls, got 4 phone calls on September 1st. Fast forward to December, he's doing his visits and got an offer right around Christmas time to a really nice Power 5 school. Big 10 school. I don't know if I should say the name, but we'll go on to that. Really good school. Well, he's locked in. A junior year, has a great junior year baseball season. You know, and through that process, he was known as the guy who had the Big 10 commitment, was on a really stellar team. In April, right after the baseball season, the coach at that college decided to retire. And everything that young man had been working for had just basically fallen apart in a matter of 24 hours. So what we did was we came back, we assessed what we had, we regrouped, we devised a new plan of action for this athlete. And that's one of the great things about the Prepstar program is, like, kids don't just want schools interested. They get dozens of schools interested. They get schools that you get on the radar of a lot of colleges. And basically all I had to do was get to them and get to my cell phone, and probably within 2 days, we 5 schools lined up this kid. So we got his recruiting back on track, but obviously this was really devastating for a kid who, you know, that was his goal, that was his dream, and then to have that pulled out from under the rug was just terrible. Fast forward to July, he went and did a handful of visits at some really nice Power 5 schools, Big 12 schools, N schools, Pac-12 schools, and ended up getting an offer to a really nice college in Kansas, one of the 2 big Kansas schools. And that was really nice because, you know, how many guys have that happen and they don't know what to do? It couldn't have happened to a better kid, actually. You know, there's lots of kids out there who, you just don't want to see anything happen to. But it was one of those situations where everything was picture perfect, and then it just kind of crumbled. So I was really proud of that. The kid's been locked down, signed his letter of intent last November. Spoke to his dad yesterday. They're planning on heading up that way in late June, early July, so he can pick up with the team and get started. That's one of my most favorite. But I got a couple other guys. I had a guy one year that was with a competitor of ours, and you kind of mentioned like a lot of leeches out there. The poor kid was lineman in this conference. Matter of fact, I think he was the biggest lineman in the state of Iowa at the time. 6'6", 315, big kid, and really good athlete. Played left tackle, and problem was coach wasn't very supportive, which that happens. Matter of fact, the coach pulled in all the parents right at the beginning of the season and said, I don't think I have a college caliber athlete, let alone a Division I athlete on my program.
That's rough.
So don't expect me to help anybody. And luckily the parents had found us, and we talked to them and started getting the kid connected with coaches, started doing our job is what we were starting to do. And the interest started trickling in. Along the way, coach moved him from left tackle to guard so that he could protect the center, who was about 5'10" and 160 pounds, related to the coach. So you guys know what I'm talking about there.
Yeah.
So you have the biggest kid in the conference playing out of position with nobody advocating for him. So I did my job. We did what we were supposed to do. Started getting the kid a little interest. And the fun part was 3 days before signing day. This was 2016, if I remember right. His mom called me, and one of the things we always work with our families is we're kind of an open door policy. So the mom called me and said, my son is at his wit's end with this recruiting. We need to have a quick conference call. So, okay, great. It's about 8:30 my time here on the Pacific West Coast, and starts talking to the athlete. And I said, tell me what's going on. And by that, he said, well, coach, because I'm just done with it. I'm so tired. I said, what? You're tired? He said, these coaches, they keep calling me. They visit the school. They're sending me text message. He said, they just won't leave me alone. I can't handle it. I'm done. He's like, I don't even want to play. So I backed him up. I said, well, wait a minute. Tell me what's going on. He said, well, I said, tell me how many coaches are talking to you right now. He said, well, coach, there's 14 coaches that have made offers, and they won't leave me alone. And I said, well, wait a minute. 14 offers? You don't have a problem. I said, there's thousands of kids in this country that would love to have one offer. You're belly aching over 14. Your problem is you don't know how to say no. And that was something we worked with him on was, okay, how do you let these coaches down? Coaches are aggressive. They want to make their teams better. We all know that. So that was what I talked to this young man, and we talked about, okay, how do you gently let coaches know in a way that's positive and not egotistical, that coach, this isn't the place for me. He ended up going to a nice Big 12 school, finally winnowed it down and made his decision a week or so later and signed his letter of intent, and he's good to go. But he's one of my favorite stories of all time. I could go on and on and on if you want more. I've had some kids whose parents were deceased. One maybe lost a dad. I have one young man lost a dad when he was a young man. His mom found us. Mom was a school teacher and just needed help and guidance along the way. And stellar kid, relatively small, kind of obscure, West Virginia, ends up with a full scholarship offer to Army. 8 offers. Army's a $60,000 education. And, he got a lot of offers from Cincinnati's and Robert Morris's and those kind of West Virginia State, those kind of schools. It's Division I, a little bit smaller Division I's. But his mom, one of the fun things that happened with that was she called me before they went on the visit and said, Mike, I don't really want him to go. I don't even want to do this visit, but after all, it's Army. So who gets a chance to go tour West Point?
Exactly.
So she's like, I'm absolutely going to this. And I told her, I said, just go enjoy the experience. Come back. You still got these other offers on the table. So they did it. Next day I sent a message, gives me all back, and she said, I love the play. She said, I so hope he decides to go there. She said, I think it's going to be the best opportunity for him to be successful, not only now, but after he's done playing football. Mm-hmm. And, here goes a kid from a very, very small school, coal mining area of West Virginia. He's going to a tremendous school. I mean, I could tell you hundreds of stories like that. That got hurt. They're fun. Yeah, athletes that got hurt, everybody left, gave up on them, and but talented, and we helped them get through the process and end up getting a nice scholarship and finding a place to continue to play and do what they love to do. I mean, not every one of them sounds great, ends up being one of the fun stories, but for me, it's about finding the right fit. It's about helping that athlete know that this is a place that I'm going to enjoy. This is a place that I feel confident that I'm going to improve as an athlete. I'm going to be challenged as a student, and I'm going to get to play the game I love and for at least another 4 more years. And that's a win. I don't care if big time school, if it's a Division II, NAIA, it's all about finding that fit for that athlete. That's what's most important.
Mike, you bring up a very good point, because I coach baseball too, and a couple of years ago, we were lucky enough to win the state title and be ranked in the top 20 in the country and whatnot. And our best player, who was the Gatorade Player of the Year, signed with a college, got down there, played 1 year, whole coaching staff got fired, ends up having to go to JUCO. Now he's down at Missouri State. So it's kind of worked out, but like I said, you got the plan set up, and then all of a sudden the plan changes just because of unforeseen circumstances. And, some of his buddies were down at the JUCO. So, I don't know the whole story with it, but I'm sure that helped with getting him there, and then moving on from there. But I thought you brought up something really good when you were talking about the baseball player. You said, when he was a freshman, he kind of started getting involved with you. And that was something we talked to our kids a lot about on the baseball side of things, was it's not too early to start, because there can be a too late. Could you kind of talk about that a little bit? Like, when do you want to see kids kind of start this process, and when is it kind of getting down to crunch time and we got to really get going?
Right. On our website, we have a timeline for the athletes, but I really think that they should start thinking about the process in as early as junior high, 8th grade. We don't work with 8th grade, very rarely with 8th graders. I can think of all my years, we might have had one, and that would be your anomaly. Some 8th grader that's 6'6", just for some weird reason. I think the best time to start is around your freshman year or going into your sophomore year. And it's just simply because the longer the coach has to watch you and to watch you develop as an athlete, the better it's going to serve you. It's going to serve that athlete. And I also think that with the new regulations of especially in baseball, with September 1st of your junior year being a pivotal time, my personal opinion is that moved up the recruiting timeline, as opposed to giving a lot more leeway for coaches. I think it's done, I don't want to say more harm than good, but it has sped up the recruiting. Coaches are now identifying and offering kids as freshmen and sophomores because they want to be able to sign those kids or do the officials their junior year and then move on. So I feel like if the athlete is demonstrating elite or skills above their peers, if they're competing at a high level, that athlete as a freshman or a sophomore would benefit from starting to get exposure through the recruiting process. And equally the same, if an athlete's not ready, I don't think that athlete would benefit. I think a lot of coaches recognize names and check kids off a list, and that does more harm than good. So I would say, like, again, for me, like either in between the freshman sophomore year, when that kid is a stellar sophomore, a stellar freshman, somewhere around in there is a perfect time to start getting exposure. But even before that, start mapping it out, having a plan of whether it's travel teams or start setting some goals that's going to help that kid make incremental steps in the right direction. Because way too many kids wait. They wait too long for one reason or another. They hope somebody's just going to find them, hope that some coach is going to, make the right phone call for them. And before you know it, they're down to 6 months and you can't get any. It's too difficult. It's just so much more difficult. Not impossible, but
difficult.
Yeah.
From the baseball side of things, it seems like to me and a lot of the other coaches that I coach with over the last, you're looking 5, 6, whatever years, you got all these showcase things that are going on, perfect game events, and it seems like it's an easy way to get a lot of the kids a lot of exposure at those things. But what do you guys recommend from that standpoint? If you got a kid who he's a dude, and he's going to be a dude, what do you recommend to them with some of that stuff?
I think those are all. There's a lot of them that are really good, and they do a good job of putting opportunities for the athlete. Perfect Game is a great example. PBR, they do a good job. Then there's a lot of groups out there that are not helpful. I think competition is going to be king a lot of times, and the most important part is at all these things that they want, but if nobody knows about that athlete beforehand, they're just playing tournaments. They're just playing games. So I think that's where our role is, to help them get on the radar so that when they're playing in these competitions or these tournaments or these showcases, the coach where to find coaches about them. Because that's how recruiting works now. Recruiting works now before a coach on a plane or gets in a car, they know about these guys. There's too much money invested in it. And so they want to know about these kids before they even go see them play. And I think, again, those opportunities are really good. I always tell families, go where you're wanted. And I also counsel families that you're going to waste a lot of time and money by just going to every camp, combine, and showcase that's out there. And there's a lot better ways to do it.
Yeah, you mentioned it earlier. There's so much stuff going on, and there's so many people coming at you from different directions that sometimes you get kind of lost as to where you should be. And I think it goes back. I'm totally taken back by your coach who said, "Hey, listen, I don't think I have this. We don't have this." He's telling all the parents this. And I've been around a bunch of coaches who said, well, I'm going to be completely honest with the kid, and I'm going to tell him where he needs to go play and what he needs to do. And I'm like, well, okay, I get that. I understand that. But I've been all around this country watching kids play ball. And there's some avatars out there, right? There's some dudes. There's some people that just look different. They play different. But for the majority of time, high school kids, a lot of them are fairly equivalent. I'm not going to say equal. I'm going to say fairly equivalent.
Sure.
And sometimes it'll bother me when I'll hear these other coaches go, well, I think he's only good enough for this. I'm like, well, dude, you had him playing offense, defense, special teams. You had him as captain. You had him as this, that. And now you're going to tell me that he shouldn't even go play college football? I don't understand. So I really
Right.
think you bring up a good point that you have to be willing to do the work you need to do, right? You
Mhm.
have to understand that if you're good at what you do, there's going to be people show interest, and you better be able to handle that interest, just like that tackle, right? You got to be able to
Right.
process that stuff, and at the same time, you need that support system from not just your family and not just Prepstar, which you guys do an amazing job from the way it sounds, but from your coach too, right? You need that
Right.
because now what I'm seeing is I'm seeing coaches circumvent or college coaches circumvent the high school coach, and they're just going right to the kid on social media, right? So that
Yeah.
whole thing is being bypassed. Like, well, we don't really have to go in the school maybe all the time,
Right.
but right now we're stuck because we're in quarantine and nobody could go anywhere.
Right.
So how is COVID kind of reshaping this recruiting process for everybody?
I think it's made it more digital than ever. I think that, um, like you said, nobody can get out. So what's really important is how do they find these athletes, and how, you mentioned the same thing, but who knows how many kids are on Twitter? I know a lot of guys I talk about that their basic strategy for recruiting is, I'm just going to DM as many coaches as I can get. Well, the problem with that is if everybody's doing it, nobody's doing it. If everybody's doing it, you end up getting lost in the shuffle. Coaches are getting and just bombarded with these DMs and things like that. And I can't blame a kid for trying to promote himself. I mean, the heck, if they're confident in their abilities. The other problem is we're often not matched appropriately. You end up with a kid that's not really a top tier Division I talent trying to promote himself, where his time would be better suited spending his time connecting with coaches that are a better fit for him. And so, we often forget that college football, for example, is much more than the Power 5 teams we see on TV on Saturdays. There's a lot more colleges out there that are not on TV than are on TV. And there's a lot more colleges out there offering scholarships for baseball than what we see just on ESPN or whatever. So I think it's going to be a lot more digital. Right now, I know for us that, we get a lot of coaches that are interested in seeing our guys and our girls because we've already vetted them. They know where they can find them. We make it really easy. We take care of the research for them. They just basically got to find, the player that's the best fit for their program. So I think that, that's going to make it a lot more digital. I also think we're going to see an uprise in camps once this is all done. I wrote about it on my blog, my Elite Athletes recruiting blog. I think you're going to see a lot more schools and a lot more of these kind of camps pop up as to try to get kids exposure. And that's going to mucky, it's going to murk up the water a little bit, because you're going to get some guys out there doing some of these combines in the middle of a high school parking lot kind of thing. And they're out there because I know they're out there.
Right.
So I think there's going to be some more of that. But in terms of recruiting, I think our 2021s are really behind the 8 ball now.
I kind of look at the kids and I tell them, they're like, "Hey coach, what do we do?" And I'm like, man, I don't know that I have the answer, but I could tell them now I know somebody who knows the answer. That's for sure. Because there's so much that goes into this. Like, I have a buddy who's been the director of recruiting at a couple of D1 schools, and every time I get a chance to talk to him, I just feel like I get an education, because he's telling me all the stuff that's going in. And he even came by the high school once for weightlifting, and he talked to the kids and he goes, "Listen, I'm going to show you a spreadsheet that we go through." And he pulled it out, and on that spreadsheet is every recruit. And the coach assigned to check his social media every day, to check to see what he's posting, to see who he likes, to see who he follows, to do see, are you wearing a conference competitor's jersey in a picture? I mean, it's totally crazy. So I get questions from the kids sometimes, like you just said, Mike. You're like, kids are DMing coaches. So I get this question all the time, and truly, I don't know the answer other than to just be stubborn and keep doing it. And I'm sure you're going to educate us right here. But what do you tell a kid who he says, "Coach, I've reached out to this coach 20 times and he won't answer me back"? What should a high school football, baseball coach tell that kid to do?
Yeah, I think persistence is key. That is the number one complaint feedback that I get from parents or from athletes. And I personally, I feel like the coaches, I would wish that the coaches would have some sort of response to the athlete, just an acknowledgement. Now, I'm a realist, and I know that if you get 300 emails a day, you probably aren't going to be able to have the time to do that. And I totally understand that the coaches are busy. But what I tell guys are like, look, understand that the coaches they're doing different things. Be persistent. I also tell them, look, consider other options. I like to use the dating analogy a lot with our athletes, either boys or girls, because they understand how that works. And I say, look, if you keep Snapchatting someone and they keep blocking you, or they don't connect with you back, get the hint, right? But this is a little bit different context where, if we know that we're appropriately matched with a coach, we feel like we're a good fit. We're not out of our league, so to speak. Be persistent, because the opposite happens very frequently, where I can contact the coach and say, hey, I know that I've been sending you some information on Johnny, and the coach will say, well, I've looked at that kid's profile. I've sent him a letter. I've sent him a DM, and he never contacted me back. So it does work both ways. Kids don't check one of the things that I think kids fail to do is they don't have their voicemail set up on their phone, and they don't check their voicemails, and they don't return their text messages on a timely manner. And what they fail to realize is that a lot of times coaches just have a small window of time to interact with a player. And if that kid has that mentality that, like, look, I'll get to him when I get to him, they're going to miss an opportunity. So, but yeah, it's that is the number one complaint we get from parents and from student athletes.
Let's say that you have a kid, who's signed to go to a college, but then he gets drafted by an MLB team. And, I'm sure you've had this incident, show up before. What do you guys kind of do at that point with sitting down and trying to help them with that decision?
Yeah. So we're not agents. So
right.
That is one of the things. Do we know agents? Yes. Do we know people in MLB, or especially like for baseball minor leagues, that we can connect them with? That's usually what I do. I have some contacts. For goodness sake, I live in Phoenix, so we're full of baseball players and retired people. I coach myself, and one of our coaches on our staff is a certified MLB catching coach and hitting instructor. He knows the process in and out. So we kind of point them in the right direction with that. We let them know their options. A majority of your college athletes who do get drafted, they'll go ahead and do their college. So I just try to inform them on that. I got 3 guys this 2020 season that I think are draft eligible, that had we not for the COVID, I think I would be really confident that would have gotten drafted this year. And the 2, I think, still have a great chance. But if they don't, it's strictly because they didn't get to showcase their abilities, because they're tremendous players and already had already been. So I just think that's just more a little bit of a timing thing now than a ability. It's just sort of months. So. Mm. Right. Right. 'Cause a lot of these high school players, this is where, we're not talking about high school players that are competing at a low level. We're talking about kids that are playing in the CIF over in California with teams that are, or here in Arizona with that are loaded with pitchers that are throwing 90 miles an hour. Those kids that are playing in Louisiana and Florida and stuff like that, they just don't get an opportunity. And the junior class, I'm very concerned about them. I'm very concerned about these baseball players because this spring is so important for them heading into summer. So it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out.
Well, I have like a two-part question, and one part is going to be a little funny, but the other part's going to be absolutely. I really want to know the answer. So I hear that a lot of states are going to let kids reclassify. They're going, like, if they can't go back to school and you want to do your junior year over again, you can. I know the NC2A has just given eligibility back to the spring sport athletes. So, this question might come up for you, Coach, and I don't know. I really don't know the answer, but if I'm looking at ahead to a college and a group of kids were supposed to graduate, that maybe they play the position I do or they don't, or I might be competing against it, but now they're still going to be there. Do you guys have an opinion on the whole reclassification thing for high school kids? I mean, just on a 30,000-foot view, is it a wise thing to do or not?
I've actually got a few kids that have already reclassified. I don't really recommend it personally, but we're actually seeing families red shirt or gray shirt their kids as freshmen when back in junior high. We see a lot of. I can't blame a family for wanting to be strategic about how they're going to handle their son or daughter's recruiting. With that said, they're also kids. And I want to look at what is the advantage to that. What's the long-term effects of that? Making that kid go be a junior again or be a senior again. I don't know what the ramifications of that are going to be. So I'm seeing it. I'm not necessarily liking it, but if they do it and they still have eligibility, we do help those guys. And I don't see that much more than what I would consider like a prep school or a gap year program where you're seeing some guys hold on to their eligibility. You get them to go to some of these sports specific prep schools or those kinds of things, and try to develop a little more. So I don't have too much of a problem with that. I get it. Eligibility wise, I think that's going to be really interesting. My daughter is a college freshman. She pitched. She's a pitcher. She pitched in 6 games, which bypassed her eligibility to get a red shirt. She pitched in 6. If she would have pitched in 4, she could have probably gotten a red shirt. So she will get her eligibility. She'll get an additional year of eligibility. So that's good for her. I think, all in all, I think it's a very benevolent act by the NCAA. But I also think that outside of major schools, major Power 5 schools where you're going to be competing for championships or any team that's going to be competing for a championship, I don't think you're going to see a lot of athletes take colleges up on an additional year. The reality is the average college costs about $42,000 a year. And most students, by the time they get to be graduate, they're done. They're ready. They've had a plan to stay, to finish in 4 years, move on with my life. And that's a lot of the feedback I've got from some of the former student athletes is like, hey, I think I'm happy. I left it all on the field. I don't need to play another year. And they don't want to accrue any more debt, because the reality is you've got to stay. Even though the NCAA said, hey, we're going to leave it up to the schools to give you money, to give you an award. For the most part, in a lot of sports, you don't get a lot of money anyway. Now, for baseball, for example, of 11.7 scholarships, I had a conversation with a parent of a kid who was committed and signed with the school, and they're possibly carrying up to, they have 50 guys. The college has 50 guys, and the coach wants to winnow it down to 8 to 40 to 42. So you have 8 kids who are either promised scholarships or promised roster spot now that are so we're seeing a lot of that, but I don't think that there's going to be a lot of parents who want to pay an additional 40 grand so their kid can go all the way through a semester,
right.
and then play that final semester of school. And other than maybe a 5th year master's or something like that that's available to an athlete, I see it more as a gesture of goodwill, but I really don't think it's going to make too much impact outside of those schools. But I think it's going to be interesting. But yeah, it's how could you carry 42 kids?
Right. You can't. It's impossible, because even with baseball, it very rarely do you see full rides, and it's you only got a certain amount of percentage anyway, and now you're going to divide it up even more. Like you said, that's just not going to happen.
Right. So you're going to ask, so somebody has to pay the bill. And the reality is, take my example. My daughter played elite travel softball for 12 years. She'll play an additional 4 years on scholarship. So, her feedback to me was like, Dad, I've done all that I want to do. And I get it, but I think when the time comes, right now it's more of a knee-jerk reaction. The kids were cut short; they didn't have any closure, and I understand that.
Yeah.
But I think once reality sets in and they the summer job or they whatever, start to move on with life, it'll be like, well,
Yeah.
I mean, how are they got to take full classes? They got to take a full load, eligible. Not like you're taking one class and paying $3 or $4.
Right.
You're going to take at $1,000 a credit hour, and you're going to carry 9 or 12, depending on what the school asks you to do.
So I have a challenge for you. Here it is. Here's the second part of my question, and then we're going to get into your contact information, because I'm sure a lot of the people listening are going to want to know how to get a hold of you, if it's just to ask questions or to get their athletes signed up. So here's the challenge. I'm 45. I can still run. I'm pretty strong. I already have an advanced degree, but I'm pretty sure I have 1 year of eligibility left. Can Prepstar help me?
Oh boy.
Because I'm telling you, if I could just hit somebody a couple more times,
just suit up, right?
Oh man, any stress level that I have would just fall away. I mean, it would just like melt away, and I don't even need like a whole season. I probably just need a couple practices. So, can you guys help arrange that? Can I get something?
Well, I'm not a miracle worker, but I believe I can find somebody.
Nice. It doesn't have to be Army. I mean, I'm not picky. It doesn't have to be Army, but I mean, somewhere in the SEC would be fine.
SEC, that might be a tall order, but I think I could find you like a mid-level or a Division III that wants to do some nice marketing. 45.
Hey, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
I'm perfectly fine. Be like, look, after 20 years, comes back to fulfill his glory days.
Break his leg.
Yeah, it's more right.
The cart you out on the field.
It's way more than 20 years, but I appreciate you knocking it down a little bit. I like that. Coach, how do people get a hold of you?
Oh, they can get a hold of me online, Instagram at Michael Woosley. Woosley. Twitter, same handle, Prepstar Southwest. That's my section of Prepstar because I live in the Southwest. So you can find me on Twitter at Prepstar Southwest. My blog, Elite Athletes Recruiting. My website, CoachMikeWoosley.com. That's pretty simple. Lots of different ways to contact me. Don't Facebook me because I will find you. I don't use Facebook. But Instagram or Twitter is probably the best. Office line, I can give you an office line if you want. 805-622-7827. That's my direct office line. So you can text me at that number and then I can give you some information. But yeah, one of the things we do is we always take a look at every athlete. So as I mentioned, we're pretty selective, and what we do is we take 360 athletes, so 360 per sport. That allows us to be a lot more hands-on with the athletes. Our scouts don't carry a large load of athletes, and we're a lot more personal that way. So what we're able to do is be a lot more selective, and then but again, some of those kids don't. So we do promise every athlete, we'll give you an evaluation, or what we call a recruiting call. We'll give you a free evaluation. We'll help you get your academics in order, give you some direction about what you should be doing or what they should be doing to get to the next level. And that's okay. Some kids don't. That's like a kid that goes to your football program and needs to be a starter, and he sits down with the coach, and the coach tells him, hey, this is what you're going to have to do to make the starting lineup on our team. And that's the same philosophy we have. So we don't turn kids away for financial reasons. So if we find a good athlete and we think we can help them, we figure out ways to help those kids. So that's a great thing with us. But yeah, so if somebody out there wants to just reach out and say, hey, what does my son need to be doing to get himself or her or get my daughter in the right direction? It's usually a 20 to 30 minute call, a video call. So we see each other, it's really personable, and we point you in the right direction. And if we need to follow up with you in the future, we do. And so it's one of the most rewarding and enjoyable things I've ever done. I love it. I get to meet people like you. So it's been really fun.
JR, can you put his stuff on our website?
Absolutely.
Coach, if you want us to put your blog up on our website, we have a little article section. Mm-hmm. We'll throw your blog up there if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
Get the word out. You got some roots here in mid-Missouri. We gotta see what we could do there.
We gotta
see how we can make that happen.
We gotta help make it happen. Yeah, a lot of guys. We just try to help as many kids as we can. I think it's all about giving them new opportunities and putting these kids in a situation to be successful when they're done. And it's fun. It's fun. I appreciate you guys having me on.
That does it for us. Another episode, Process, Preparation, Performance. Peace out.